The road to success is rarely a straight line. It's full of twists and turns, detours, redirections, hills and valleys. So join us on the path to success as we explore people's personal journeys. Come be encouraged, informed, and empowered to reach your dreams.
Thank you for joining the Path to Success podcast. And I'm super excited today. This is season 2 of the podcast. And I finally was able to get my brothers as guests on the show, Cornel and Mark. Hello. So today's topic is going to be just the path to success. And like the intro said, it's never a straight line. It's twists and turns, it's ups and downs, it's detours, it's adjusting to the change that's going on. So let me do a real formal introduction of my guest today. So my guest today first is my brother, Cornel Pendergrass. And Cornel, through his career, he's been a VP at Core Assurance, at Connor Strong and Buckaloo. He's been a VP at Rutherford, a Marsh & McClendon company. Currently, he's a senior exec at Odell and Studner. And what do you do? What's the industry that you're in?
I'm in the insurance and risk management industry. We always say we help people when they have accidents or incidents. We also try to help them not have those accidents or incidents. So risk management and controlling losses.
And then my other guest is my brother, Mark Pendergrass. So Mark has been at Wells Fargo for 35 years. I didn't even realize it was that long. And at Wells, he's been in a number of roles. He is currently an assistant vice president in the information technology business unit. Also, Mark is the founder and executive director of Creating Exposure to the Arts. Now, that's a nonprofit that educates, that empowers, that mentors youth by providing them exposure through artistic expression. So Mark, first tell us, what are you doing at Wells Fargo today? And then tell us a little, what are you doing with Creating Exposure?
So I'm in a technology group supporting technology executives, data management, project management, analysis and metrics, executive reporting across our technology and finance groups. So doing that on a daily basis. And then with Creating Exposure Through the Arts, it's a nonprofit that I've been founded back in 2012 after doing a bunch of work with nonprofit organizations since college, volunteering in various nonprofits and community organizations, church organizations, and then decided at some point just to start my own nonprofit so I can control where things go and really have more of a hand in programming and development.
Now, since we're talking about that, just a quick commercial on the recent documentary. You submitted in some film festivals. You're doing something, a display or art display throughout the city of Charlotte. Tell us a little bit about that real quick.
So yeah, located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the organization, which is, again, it's been working with teens and youth and now creatives in their 20s and even older, just completed a documentary called Behind the Ink, and it kind of tells stories about tattoos, stories about why people get tattoos, and it just crosses ethnicity, age, cultures. It's a very diverse project, and really followed a young lady from the Dominican Republic getting her first tattoo in the U.S. So that's a huge project for us. Has been in it in several film festivals. It was runner-up in the U.S. short documentary segment for the Williamsburg film competition in New York. It's going to be featured in the Synodyssey Film Festival in Charlotte, North Carolina next month. And we'll be doing virtual and gallery showcases throughout the year and looking to kind of take it beyond Charlotte. Just completed a gallery pop-up show in New York this past fall or summer, I should say. And we'll be doing a bunch of projects around that. So just kind of giving people an opportunity to showcase their talents, but also mentoring and educating youth who are now also part of my organization.
So now just to round up the intros, right? I'm Boris Pendergrass, and the impetus of this podcast was last year I wrote a book called Surviving Layoffs. And it was about being 26 years in technology industry, being on the layoff list 3 times, and each time having job opportunities inside and outside of my company, right? So just growing in my career, I am a pre-sales solution engineer. I sell software. It was 26 years at Oracle. Just recently, I moved to a fantastic company called Informatica. So I just want to start our conversation off with, thanking God that we had been on this path to success. 3 boys born in Harlem, public housing, public school. And I just wanted to have a little conversation about what are some of the key things that have been key for us. And Cornel, I'm going to start with you. Before you start, open disclosure, I am the oldest. Cornel is in the middle, and Mark is the youngest. And there's only like a 4-year gap between us. I won't share my age, but Cornel, you VP 3 or 4 times, great success in your career today. What's key for you? What's foundational? How is that happening?
So I'm going to start going backwards. We grew up in a home that had both parents.
Yes.
Our parents always encouraged us to be able to think that you can do anything that anyone else can do. If you have the same education, why not? Why not me, right? So I've always taken that. Now, the flip side of that, and I can talk about this now, we've always looked at, we've been in corporate America, and we've always been, and I'm continue to be a Black male in corporate America.
Yeah.
And how does that influence us? Did we always feel like we had to work a little harder, be a little smarter, always be on top of your game? So I think, again, the challenge was from my parents, but also between the 3 of us, we were always challenged to push each other, to encourage each other. Had a lot of contests, I don't know if that's the right word, games to encourage each other. But we also wanted to make sure each other were going forward, and whatever we could do to help each other, we were always there for each other, in addition to some others in our circle.
So Mark, for you, you're a VP today. You are the executive director, founder of a successful nonprofit that's really impacting the community. What's been the key for you for your success?
I think, again, the foundation and encouragement, but also just our parents and the circle that we were amongst growing up, even till now, has always given us opportunities to do things different. Here we are, 3 young men from Harlem, but at an early age, we had success in whatever it was, whether it was sports, music. We had opportunities where our parents gave us opportunities to just find the things that we love to do, right? So that opened up so many different doors, so that, for myself, I know through writing and things that I love to do at a very young age, at 11 years old, I traveled to Brazil based on a competition, a writing competition, right? You travel to different countries as a high school athlete, right? So that gave you exposure out of the country. Cornel, you had an opportunity to be, skip different grades and be amongst people older than you, but to have the knowledge to sit in a classroom and compete with people older than you. So at a young age, we always had that opportunity. Our parents said, hey, I'm going to let you try this. We're going to let you try this and find out the things that you love to do, find out the passion that you have, but also educate yourself and be amongst people that we probably weren't normally in rooms with, right? So that started at a very young age to be a Black man, like you said, Cornel, a Black man in a room that I wouldn't normally be in. As an 11-year-old, I was a Black man in a room of people from different countries, a room of people who were all probably white, wealthy people who are amongst on a daily basis, right, prepping to go to another country to represent the U.S. And I'm sure we all had these experiences of being in a room that we representing ourselves, our families in Harlem, but we're also, showing that we deserve to be in that space.
You talk about the exposure that we've been exposed to. So our parents had us in music lessons. At the Dance Theater Harlem, we took music and instrument lessons. One time out near Brooklyn Tech, we took music and instrument lessons. We were very active, and you played for Riverside Church. Riverside Church was a very, still today, prominent, significant church, Protestant church in the Harlem community. I think it was built by the Rockefellers. That's where their funerals were. Just like some of the exposure, Mark, I totally forgot. You went to Brazil at 11 years old. And that was just an awesome experience. And just one thing before I just open it up again is you talked about us encouraging each other. So you mentioned it, Mark, I'll go into a little detail. So Cornel, you guys skipped from 3rd grade to 5th grade, and you didn't go to the 4th grade. So now I'm in the 6th grade. I'm like, whoa, dude is catching up. You know, he's supposed to be in the 4th grade, in the 5th grade, I'm in the 6th grade. So it's this environment of us encouraging each other, pushing each other.
And I'll add to that. I think there was even, if I can remember, they wanted to skip you from 5th to 7th, and our parents said no, because you'd really be aged out in a classroom with people 3 or 4 years older.
And it was also the school superintendent. The school didn't think, I was ready for that from a social standpoint. Here you're going from 3rd to 5th, then from 5th to 7th. That would have been a lot. Like Boris said, we'd have been in the same grade 2 years apart. And that would have been like, what are we doing together? My little brother's with me. So,
but you know what? Just another thing too, us working together, helping each other, and encouraging each other. So me and Mark went to Rutgers University. I was a senior, Mark was a freshman. And Mark, somewhere in your career, I don't know if it was your sophomore or junior year, you actually became editor of the Black Voice newspaper. And I, one year, wrote an article called Spirit Food for the Black Voice because you was the editor. Talk about just that. Editor of Rutgers University newspaper, the State University of New York. Just talk a little bit about that. Of New Jersey, State University of New Jersey.
Yeah. So again, here you're bringing up some great memories. I was at Rutgers in my first 2 years. I walked on and was on the Rutgers football team, but wasn't getting playing time. And my love was still writing, photography, journalism, communications. So I decided to stop playing and focused on really writing for newspapers. I was doing a radio show at Rutgers. I was writing, some articles for the Daily Targum, but there was the Black Voice Carta Boricua, which was their Black and Latino newspaper. And I kind of worked my way from a staff writer to a sports editor to a news editor to editor-in-chief my senior year. And at that point, as editor-in-chief, you basically call the shots. So here I am again, from a captain on the football field to being a leader to now a leader in the newsroom, right? So what do? Right? I try to do what I can and bring people on board. And you were writing a spiritual article and was like, hey, I got a platform. Why not? Right? This is what we're supposed to do when we're in a position that we can help somebody, whether they're in the campus, off the campus. I'm in a position to allow you to, have a platform. And then so be it. Spirit Food was in the Rutgers Black Voice Carta Boricua. Yeah.
Now, I like what you said there is about helping others. And I just want to segue there because not only are we talking about our own individual success, but helping others. And Cornel, you were talking about your experience managing people, leading teams, and kind of your focus on that.
So one of my focuses and a big focus of mine has always been to make sure that others are getting opportunities, promoting them, seeing whatever I can do to help their career, launch their career. And even in my yearly assessments, that's one of the things I always put in is, hey, I want to make sure that 1 or 2 people, whatever the number is, getting promoted. And it's always, how can I help them? And I think that comes back to my parents. They were always helping, always there to show that, hey, I have a resource, whatever little or I do have, I'm going to open it up and allow others to experience it, to grow from it. So I've always taken that, even in the business community, even today, to say, hey, I take the approach, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room, but I need to know how to get the people together, the right people together. And that's what it's all about, as you're going to grow professionally, as you're going to grow, even in your life, bring in the right people. I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to know where to get them from. And again, I'm a firm believer of, if I don't do this for people to help them get promoted, who will?
Now, Mark, I want you to talk a little bit about that also, because I know you're doing that in your nonprofit and you're seeing now the little students now be leaders. But before we do that, we talked about our parents, Daisy and Walter Pendergrass. Our mother Daisy is from Jacksonville, North Carolina. Our father Walter was from Orangeburg, South Carolina. And they were community leaders. They worked on the tenant association. They wrote grants. They brought in monies to They had a computer class in our public housing. They had a karate class. They did sewing class. They took students on trips to African-American museums, to DC. So we were in this environment where you helped others. And that's outside of the community, not alone our family members. I mean, even today, we have family reunions with 125, 150 people from all over the country. So that commitment to help others. But Mark, tell me about the stuff that you're doing, not just for your own success, but pulling others up.
Yeah, so me being in this nonprofit sector, again, it started for me really understanding at home. We were always involved in community, right? So we were always doing things in church. We were doing things, whether it was playing in church, singing in church. That's church is a nonprofit entity, right? So we were always involved in our church and in our community. But fast forward to me having my own nonprofit, I find like there's always this diamond in the rough where I find this student who is committed, and there's this change about them where I see like, hey, that's somebody who's going to stick around, be part of the program, and that's one of the things I appreciate is that we have students who have gone full cycle from being a full circle, I should say, from being teen students to now they're in their 20s, they're instructors, they're teachers, they're mentors, they come back, they're directors and they're directing the documentary, they're directing photo shoots, they're setting up gallery showcases. Again, so, I appreciate that. And that's one of the things you want. You want to prepare somebody like you, Cornel, you mentor and prepare people in that corporate sector. A lot of my mentoring happens in this nonprofit sector where I'm preparing these young creatives, right, to then find if this is something they want to do as a career, or what I also tell them is you'll be the best photographer, journalist, or filmmaker in your family, even if you don't choose to do it as a career, right? But I'm preparing them for life, and I'm using photography and things that they can attach to as the vehicle, right? Because I'm still teaching them how to be young men and young women. I'm still teaching them how to communicate in an environment as an entrepreneur or just in public speaking, right? So there's so many different things they learn, and the camera and the photography and the graphic arts is just kind of the platform, again, to introduce them and take them into rooms where now they're in rooms with the mayor of Charlotte. They're in rooms with, professional athletes in Charlotte, right? They're in rooms with, the shot callers in Charlotte, councils and organizations who we are now shooting for and voluntarily or fee for service, right? So now there's a platform where these students and the organization is getting hired for work, right? And it's all based on that student. And again, that 13-year-old is now 26 and he's coming back and it's helping his business, but he's also helping.
I want to shift the conversation a little bit. Cornel, you mentioned something how, our dad would say, the world that we live in, right, it's still racial. Mm-hmm. And there's still limited opportunities or, obstacles for Blacks in general. And, we're Black men. And so in your path to success, and I know we've all experienced this because we've had conversations, is that there are sometimes doors or options that you have to kick down, walk through, go around. You have to knock on the door and say, I want the opportunity. I know there's been situations where you have had to have the conversation with your executives on, your future goals and them being prepared for that. I want to share a story, then you share a story, and Mark, you share a story. So I guess as I'm thinking about that, I've had several times where I've managed and I've led. So I had this one time where I was managing a sales organization at Oracle, and I got the promotion, saw the promotion. My boss, Laura Lau, encouraged me, said, go for it. Her boss, guy named George Bloom, was like, hey, Boris, there's 2 of these positions. You'd be better at this one. Both managers went for it, got it, finished the year out. My team hit our number. I ended up managing a team of 14 people from Atlanta all the way up to Boston. I inherited 8, I hired 6. At the end of the year, there was some kind of miscommunication where the team still existed and my team was given to someone else. One of my employees said, hey, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but someone else called me and said they're your manager. So I'm like, what? I called my manager and he was kind of like blasé, nothing like, oh, I didn't know anything about it. So then I remember, and the Lord reminded me, you know the VP. Got on the phone, called the VP, and I write this in my book. The Lord said, give him a little wiggle room. Don't come at him hard. So I say, hey, there must have been a miscommunication. Right? So we have a conversation. He's like, hey, Boris, that's the message that I got. What job do you want? So it required me to, one, follow up, chase down my manager, get an assessment that manager's really not on my side, gonna help me. Then I had to go have the conversation with the VP and be intelligent, political, and strategic with that conversation, right? And then when he said, what position you want? I want the manager job. Who doesn't want a job with a $50,000 base, increase in your base, and another, 40, 50 on top of that with, commission. So yes, we're having success, but we're having to excel and look for those opportunities and kick through down those doors. Cornel, just share.
So I'll give you a quick story. Without naming the company, who was bought by a public company, there was a situation. I was working in Northern Virginia. So one of the things I saw was we would hire interns all the time, and I'm in the insurance industry. So we would get people with risk management degrees. And at one point, a lot of people in Howard University has one of the oldest risk management insurance programs. So I approached the HR people, our HR team, and said, hey, why aren't you hiring from Howard? And their comment was, we didn't know they had a program. So I said, hey, you're hiring from everywhere in the country. You're not just hiring from the DC metro area. There are kids coming from Georgia, they're coming from South Carolina, they're coming from the West Coast. It's your job. And I said, it's your job to know that there's a program here. Eventually, they instituted something where anytime they hired, they went to Black organizations. And I also wrote a white paper to HR. It was probably a 5 or 6 page white paper, and it was diversity and inclusion, the reasons to do it, and the business reasons, because you always have to have a business case, right? And the why, what the world is starting to look like, and why. So that was something that was, and I say that because I wrote the paper, but before I sent it, I had a guy, he was the head of sales, a white guy who was a mentor to me. And he said, yeah, you need to send it. You need me to look at it, I'll look at it, but they need to know that's how you feel. It's critical to our success, So it was real for me to say, hey,
but question now, you're saying this story, I remember a little bit of the conversation. This is what, like 7 to 10 years ago?
About 10 years ago.
And I'm surprised that far ago that you were dealing with diversity and inclusion and really challenging that. Just for open disclosure, right, as a result of all the George Floyd, the murder and the protests, these last 2 years, we've seen a push of activity around diversity and inclusion. And last year, I actually was co-chair of the Oracle Corporation's Black Employee Resource Group. So it was great to hear you were 10 years ahead of me already. Mark, share with me kind of a story of you having to kick down those walls and go through those obstacles and challenges.
Well, I mean, so my career has probably been a challenge from the start, right? I'll go back to, I'm probably 4 mergers in. So there's always a challenge when you're in a financial industry that constantly changes. And then, there's acquisitions and mergers that occur, and then you never know what side you're going to end up on. So even going back to the reason I'm in Charlotte is because of a merger. When I was working for First Union Bank, going back 30 years ago in New Jersey, and on an acquisition merger team, but then ended up being on the other side of that as a company being acquired. So it changes your perspective. Okay, where am I going to land, right? So there was a choice of, am I going to, go back to New York? I'm in New Jersey. I'm going to New York. Where am I going to live? Where am I going to stay? But then there was an opportunity, even as an African-American male, to, come south, right? So there was an opportunity for me to come south, which I had never lived. But, hey, if there's an opportunity there, spoke to a friend of mine who said, hey, the city is developing, it's growing, and there might be an opportunity for you. But even then, that was, 1997, 96. Fast forward, every 5 to 6 years from that point, there was a challenge of a potential acquisition or merger. So even though I'm 30 plus years in, there's 4 different companies, and every time I'm acquired by that company. So my time is acquired and things of that nature. So even one of the challenges of probably my most recent change in jobs was based on, a friend who's a friend of mine or a coworker who knew about an opportunity, a white female who knew about an opportunity, and not knowing if they were looking for somebody African American, if they were looking to improve their diversity numbers, if they were looking to have somebody who looked like me. And at the time, well, maybe I didn't have my dreads at the time, but there was a time where I was, working in corporate America with dreads. So that's a whole nother perspective of look that maybe, someone says, even though you meet the requirements, I'm not sure if that looks good in this department, right? So, you speak about diversity and inclusion. I had been on diversity and inclusion boards. I had led a diversity and inclusion team in one of the locations out here in Charlotte that I was on. And even a story that I often tell, I'm on a team, but I noticed there's times when I would get a look because of the way I walked to a room. Sometimes being the only African American male on a project in a room, walking in with dreads. And even though you have, some loose environments like a Microsoft or an Oracle,
casual,
it's casual, but this wasn't as casual, but my hair didn't really necessarily match always the room that I'm walking into. Right. And so then, at one point I decided to cut the dreads, and I walked into a room, and it was like a total 180 where, folks, one, didn't know who I was. Yeah, they didn't know who I was, but then they almost felt a relief to kind of tell me stories of what they thought about a person with dreads. And then at that point, now I can tell you why I might, I thought your dreads had to do with you being a Rasta, you smoking, marijuana. And even I had one coworker or team member who was on a diversity team with me who was handicapped and in a wheelchair. So that's a whole nother diversity group, but she felt comfortable enough to say to me, well, now, she said to me, do people still clutch their purse or walk to the back of the elevator or walk away when they see you? I'm pretty sure they don't, because you don't have the dreads. So the dreads already had given me this look, which, sometimes, people don't say it, but they, at that point, they felt comfortable to say it. They really show you who they are. So, even in corporate America, there's this underlying view of, how you should look walking in the room. And I know that's changed over the years. This has been, 10 years ago. But again, even as I was talking about, that last position was somebody making a referral. And then me even thinking about, is this an opportunity for me? Should I take on this role, right? And then having lunch with a friend of mine, a coworker of mine, Dewey Norwood. He's very engaged in the Wells Fargo community, very engaged in diversity and inclusion. And we had a conversation. He was like, this is the perfect time. At this point in your career, you shouldn't have to knock on as many doors. When the door comes to you, those are the opportunities. And you can really kind of almost lay the cards on the table and kind of create that, that task and that role for you. So that was my last change, which was a little simpler and not as challenging. But I mean, I'm pretty sure there's always the challenge of, being an African American male walking into a room, whether it's corporate America or just, a store, right?
Yeah. So I want to do one thing. We're coming to the wrap up, right? And we're going to wrap up. But before we wrap up with our last topic, Mark, I'd just like to share something you shared in our preparation, which is key for you, and I think be key for our audience, kind of the 4 Ps. And that's a kind of a best practice for you. Share that with us.
Yeah. So I'm actually probably going to graduate that to be the Pendergrass 4 Ps, right? So one of the things I always say that, going into a room or in a situation, we always have to be prepared, right? It's nothing. We always have to be prepared for whatever it is, right? It could be from work to dinner, right? Whatever you need to do, you need to be prepared. Being proactive, right? Sometimes we have to be proactive enough to say, here's what I want, and figure out a way to go get it, right? That's proactiveness. Being persistent, right? We always have to keep trying, keep reaching for those goals, keep, have that eagerness to keep continuing to do something, whether it's a passion project or it's work or, whatever, family, be persistent at whatever you dedicate your time to. And then be productive, right? Productivity is key. We're measured on productivity, right? Even probably at home, right? We're measured on productivity, although it's different, right? We want to be productive for our families, for our wives, for our spouses or, friends. But when you get into a corporate world or work, a job, those things, productivity is measured. There's metrics around that, right? We have internal metrics that we put on ourselves. So those are the 4 Ps that I always kind of keep in mind, and I'm sharing my nuggets with y'all.